William Shakespeare, Othello. In the early 1600s, William Shakespeare sat down to write a play about interracial love. That alone is pretty remarkable. After all, this was a time when England's understanding of race was shaped more by myth and rumour than real-world experience. But Shakespeare, ever attuned to the tensions of his time, may have taken inspiration from an Italian writer named Giovanni Battista Giraldi. A few decades earlier, Giraldi had written a collection of stories that contained a tale about a Moorish sea captain whose love for his wife gets turned into murderous jealousy by his manipulative ensign. Add to this an in-person visit to London from the Moorish ambassador to the King of Barbary, which made headlines in 1600, and the backdrop for Othello begins to take shape. But what makes this play remarkable isn't just its bold subject matter, it's the legacy it leaves behind. For over 400 years, it has sparked conversation, fueled debate, and inspired fresh interpretations across time and culture. No matter how you slice it, you can't ignore the role that race plays in the story, and that's exactly what's kept it relevant, generation after generation. So how does this tragedy unfold? In the following blink, we'll look at each of the play's 5 acts, lay out all the twists in a story, and unpack some of the many reasons why Othello is still a major Broadway draw to this day. Act 1. I am not what I am. As the curtain opens on Act 1, we're dropped straight into a storm of scheming. At the centre of it all is Iago, a master manipulator and ensign to the respected military general Othello. Iago is in league with Rodrigo, a lovesick man desperate to win the heart of Desdemona, who has just secretly eloped with Othello. As is typical of Shakespeare, he wastes no time establishing the central conflict, delivering a flurry of information right from the start to set the stakes. The gist? Iago is seething with resentment after being passed over for promotion. Othello, the general he serves, has chosen Cassio as his lieutenant instead. And now, fueled by bitterness, Iago is out for revenge. In speaking with Rodrigo, Iago is already plotting to hurt Othello by playing on Rodrigo's love for Desdemona and the racism of Desdemona's father. You see, Othello is a noble Moor, meaning he is African, and Desdemona is of Venetian nobility. Iago wants to take full advantage of the potentially scandalous nature of their hasty marriage, so he is quickly at work, spreading the word and stoking outrage. After getting Rodrigo worked up, Desdemona's father, a senator by the name of Brabantio, is told that an old black ram is topping your white ewe. And in case that was too subtle, Iago goes on to inform him that your daughter and the Moor are now making the beast with 2 backs. Brabantio is indeed outraged, shuddering at the thought of how their marriage will turn bond slaves and pagans into Venetian statesmen. But Iago, ever the double-crosser, quickly changes face. After riling Brabantio into outrage, he turns around and plays the loyal soldier to Othello, pretending he tried to calm the senator down. We learn that as a senator, Brabantio could make life very difficult for Othello. But the general doesn't care. He loves Desdemona and believes his accomplishments and services will outweigh the senator's disapproval. This more or less proves to be the case because just before Brabantio confronts Othello, accusing him of bewitching his daughter and threatening to put him in jail, word arrives from Othello's faithful lieutenant Cassio that Turkish forces are threatening to attack Cyprus. To formally resolve their dispute, everyone goes to see the Duke. Othello testifies that there was no witchcraft involved. He simply regaled Desdemona with his tales of his remarkable journey, of being a former slave who went on to lead battles and find riches. The Duke is moved, remarking that even his own daughter might be won over by such a tale. Desdemona eventually arrives and confirms that there was no coercion involved, and tells her unhappy father that she does indeed love Othello. The matter is promptly settled by the Duke, who then orders Othello to take care of business in Cyprus. Othello then reveals his fondness for Iago by telling the Duke that he wishes to leave Desdemona in Iago's care while he is at war with the Turks, for a man he is of honesty and trust. Then, curiously enough, just as Othello is exiting, Brabantio warns him not to look away from Desdemona, for she has deceived her father and may thee. Before Act 1 draws to a close, Iago and Roderigo are once again alone, and Iago returns to his true devilish nature. He tells the suicidal Roderigo to not give up hope in his love for Desdemona, for he believes the union with Othello will not last. As he puts it, the Moors are changeable in their wills, and his wife will soon get bored with him. He promises Roderigo that there's still a chance he might yet have the chance to cuckold Othello. As the cheered-up Roderigo departs, Iago continues to scheme, turning to the audience and laying out the early stages of his master plan: to destroy Cassio, gain his position, and use Othello's trust as the very tool to bring him down. Act 2. And what's he, then, that says I play the villain? Act 2 opens in Cyprus, where Montano, the island's governor, and others await news of the Venetian ships caught in a violent storm. Cassio arrives first with good news. Much of the Turkish fleet has been destroyed by the storm, and Othello's ship is expected soon. Shortly after, a ship carrying Desdemona, Iago, Roderigo, and Emilia arrives safely. Cassio warmly welcomes Desdemona, even kissing her hand, a gesture Iago quickly notes and plans to use against him. Othello arrives shortly after, and the group celebrates both his safe return and the seeming end to the war. But behind the scenes, Iago is already at work. Once Desdemona and Othello head to the castle, he capitalizes on the kiss they just witnessed to convince Roderigo that Desdemona is already falling out of love with Othello and has set her sights on Cassio instead. To clear the way for Roderigo, Iago insists Cassio must be eliminated. He begins plotting a way to provoke a fight that could get Cassio accused of insubordination. To help precipitate Cassio's fall, Iago convinces Cassio to have a drink with him. Cassio tries to decline, for drink doesn't usually agree with him, but finds he can't refuse the offer. Sure enough, Cassio soon becomes drunk and belligerent, getting into a brawl that forces Othello to come out and break things up. Desdemona shows up as well and watches as Cassio gets stripped of his ranking by Othello. After the dust settles and the others leave, Iago plays the part of the comforting friend. Cassio, ashamed and furious with himself, curses the devil drink and mourns the loss of his reputation. But Iago assures him all is not lost. His reputation can be restored if he appeals not to Othello, but to Desdemona. Let her speak on his behalf, Iago suggests. Cassio, hopeful once again, thanks Iago for the advice. Left alone, Iago begins to shape his next move. If Desdemona pleads for Cassio's reinstatement, he'll use it to stoke Othello's suspicions. "I'll pour this pestilence into his ear," he says, planting the idea that Desdemona and Cassio are more than friends. To tighten the web, he decides to involve his wife, Emilia, instructing her to carry messages between Cassio and Desdemona, while he stays close to Othello, ready to twist every interaction into evidence. Act 3. If she be false, oh, then heaven mocks itself. Act 3 picks up mere hours from where we left off. Outside the castle, Cassio waits, hoping for a chance to speak with Desdemona. Emilia arrives and reassures him that both she and Desdemona are advocating for him. When Othello steps away from the garden, Cassio is quietly ushered in. Desdemona warmly promises to do everything she can to convince Othello to restore his position. But just as Cassio is leaving, Othello returns with Iago. Cassio quickly slips away, prompting Iago to mutter, I like not that." When Othello asks what he means, Iago casually brushes it off. And this is Iago's tactic throughout the act, planting seeds of doubt while pretending to stay within the bounds of loyalty. Toying with Othello, trying not to speak out of line, but subtly putting certain doubts in his head. Desdemona tells Othello that she spoke with Cassio and feels that he should be forgiven, reassuring Othello that Cassio is devoted to him. At first, Othello is resistant, but Desdemona charms him, and he admits that he is helpless to go against her wishes. He agrees to talk to Cassio. But as soon as Desdemona leaves, Othello presses Iago about what's on his mind. After a lot of hemming and hawing, Iago finally tells him, "Oh, beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on." Othello reassures him that he is not one to let jealousy get the better of reason and proof. He believes what he sees with his eyes, nothing else. At which point Iago then tells him, "I speak not yet of proof. Look to your wife. Observe her well with Cassio. Wear your eye thus, not jealous nor secure." Before he exits, Iago reminds Othello that Desdemona did betray her father, did she not? Then when Desdemona re-enters to take Othello to his appointed dinner, she finds her husband tired and with a headache. She attempts to pat his head with a handkerchief, but Othello pushes it away. It falls to the ground, and there it lays as the couple heads to dinner. The fateful handkerchief. It's a small object with enormous consequences. Emilia enters shortly after and picks it up, remarking on how important it is. It was Othello's first gift to Desdemona. Not realizing the danger of her actions, Emilia gives it to Iago, who immediately begins plotting. He plans to plant it in Cassio's room to make it seem as though Desdemona has given it away. When Othello returns, he is consumed by doubt. His mind is restless, his emotions spiraling. Desperate for clarity, he demands proof from Iago. Something, anything to confirm his suspicions. Iago obliges, claiming he's heard Cassio talking about Desdemona in his sleep. And then, to seal the lie, he asks whether Desdemona owns a handkerchief with strawberries on it. When Othello confirms she does, Iago casually drops the final blow. He saw Cassio wiping his mouth with that very handkerchief earlier that day. At this point, Othello is ready to spill blood. Iago advises him to spare Desdemona, if not Cassio. Othello then tells Iago that he is now his lieutenant, and the two leave together, ready to plan their next move. The final scene of Act 3 opens with Desdemona sending for Cassio, unaware of the storm she's now caught in. As she waits, she realizes the handkerchief is missing. Emilia plays innocent, saying she hasn't seen it. When Othello arrives, he's visibly shaken, trying to appear composed but clearly suspicious. He asks Desdemona about the handkerchief, explaining it's a magical family heirloom passed down from his mother, woven from the silk of charmed worms. When she says she does not have it, Desdemona is confused by his anger. She's never seen this side of him before, and wishes he would drop the issue for now and focus on helping Cassio. She reminds him of how devoted he is and how much the two men have been through together. But Othello storms off without a word. Moments later, Cassio and Iago enter. Desdemona tells Cassio the timing isn't right. Othello is too upset. Iago quickly volunteers to go after him, followed by Desdemona and Emilia. Now, in a suspenseful little twist, while Cassio is waiting for everyone to return, Cassio's lady friend Bianca shows up. She's wondering where Cassio has been all this time, and when Cassio reaches into his pocket and gives her a handkerchief, yes, the handkerchief, Bianca is instantly suspicious. She demands to know who it belongs to, feeling the bites from the green-eyed monster now as well. He tells her that he simply found it in his room and that she should take it and leave, for he is waiting for an important meeting. Still a bit sceptical and confused, she exits, and this pivotal act comes to a close. Act 4. Each drop she falls would prove a crocodile. Act 4 picks up right where we left off, outside the castle, with Othello in a state of emotional collapse. Hyperventilating with anxiety and gasping for air, he's overwhelmed by jealousy and suspicion. At one point he even faints, which is right when Cassio comes upon them. Iago quickly sends him away, saying he'll speak with him shortly. When Iago is able to wake Othello, he tells the general to patiently wait out of sight while he talks to Cassio and gets him to recount his affair with Desdemona. Once Othello is hidden, Iago then tells us his plan: to speak to Cassio about his relationship with Bianca, letting Othello think they're talking about his wife. All goes according to plan. Othello watching, overhearing and brewing with rage. And then Bianca shows up. She's angry with herself for having taken Cassio's handkerchief. Does he really want her to believe that he simply found it in his room? "This is some minx's token," she says, and throws it back at him. Othello sees the handkerchief, and when Cassio goes running after Bianca, Othello's first question to Iago is, "How should I murder him?" Iago and Othello weigh the pros and cons for a number of methods. "Leave Cassio to me," Iago suggests. and then suggests that Othello strangle Desdemona and to perform the act on the very bed that she has contaminated. The two conspirators are interrupted, however, when Desdemona arrives with Lodovico, her cousin, who has just arrived from Venice. Lodovico hands Othello some papers containing orders for the general to return to Venice. But then Lodovico brings up the subject of Cassio, and Desdemona explains that the rumours are true and that she hopes Othello and Cassio can reconcile given the love she has for Cassio. This is too much for Othello to hear, and he strikes Desdemona in front of everyone. Lodovico is shocked as Desdemona is left confused and in tears. He can't understand why Othello is treating his wife so heartlessly. When Othello storms off, Iago tells Lodovico that it's not for him to say, but the general may no longer be of sound mind. Othello then gets into a lengthy row with Desdemona, accusing her of being unfaithful, only for his wife to continue to plead innocence. Emilia also speaks to her defence, telling Othello that her meetings with Cassio have only been polite and chaste. He leaves Desdemona shattered, believing she no longer has a husband. Iago then comes in to comfort Desdemona, telling her that all will be well, that Othello is just upset with the affairs of state. When Desdemona and Emilia leave, Roderigo then enters. He's upset, feeling as though Iago is just stringing him along. Iago tries to calm him down and tells him that tonight his patience will be rewarded. Iago convinces Roderigo that plans are underway to have Othello and his wife sent to Mauritania, where Roderigo will have no access to Desdemona. Unless, of course, they find a way to keep the couple in Cyprus. And for that to happen, Cassio must be removed. Permanently. Act 5. Put out the light. And then put out the light. Poor, gullible, lovelorn Roderigo. The final act opens in the dead of night, with Roderigo lurking alongside Iago outside the brothel where Cassio visits Bianca. When Cassio finally arrives, Roderigo strikes, but botches the attack. His blade glances harmlessly off Cassio's armour. Cassio, quicker and better trained, retaliates and wounds Roderigo. In the confusion, Iago slips from the shadows, stabs Cassio in the leg and disappears before anyone sees him. Cassio collapses, unaware of who dealt the blow. At that moment, Othello enters. Seeing Cassio bleeding and down, he assumes Iago has done the deed. Convinced that his loyal ensign has made good on his promise of revenge, Othello, now fully resolved, returns to the bedroom to kill Desdemona. With both Roderigo and Cassio wounded and calling out for help, and many people arriving on the scene, Iago goes into damage control mode and kills Roderigo himself, but not before he can utter his final words. "Oh, damned Iago! Oh, inhuman dog!" Indeed, this would appear to be a chance for Iago to tie up loose ends, because when Bianca shows up, horrified to see Cassio bloodied, Iago suggests that she was part of this murderous plot and should be taken away. He also instructs Emilia to go to Othello and Desdemona and tell them what's happened. Meanwhile, Othello is hovering around Desdemona as she sleeps, agonizing over whether or not to kill her. When she awakens, he gives her the chance to confess her sins so that she may die with a clear soul. Desdemona continues to protest her innocence, but Othello brings up the handkerchief. "I saw it in his hands," he says. She says he must have found it and pleads with her husband to find the truth by talking to Cassio. Then, when Othello tells her that Cassio is dead, she cries, and Othello interprets the tears as further love for Cassio and smothers Desdemona. But just as he is in the process, Emilia pounds on the door. Thinking Desdemona dead, he opens the door and Emilia delivers the news. Roderigo is dead. Cassio is alive. Othello exclaims, "Not Cassio killed?" Then the murder's out of tune and sweet revenge grows harsh. When Emilia sees the body of Desdemona, she finds that she's still alive, uttering that she's dying a guiltless death before finally taking her last breath. Othello boldly claims that he did kill her because she was unfaithful. The horrified Emilia tells him it isn't true, and when Othello tells her that Iago played a role in convincing him that she'd been with Cassio, Emilia grows only more upset. She cries out, "Murder! Murder!" And soon, Iago and two other statesmen, Montano and Gratiano arrive in the bedroom. Emilia turns on her husband. She lays into Iago without hesitation, especially when Othello names the handkerchief as his damning proof. At that, Emilia sees clearly. Iago is the villain at the centre of it all. She refuses to back down, and when Iago sees that Emilia is unravelling his plot and Othello is beginning to understand the truth, he does the unthinkable. He stabs Emilia and flees. Montano runs after Iago, leaving Othello to bemoan his fate and cry over the body of his dead Desdemona. When Montano returns, he has with him Lodovico, as well as both Iago and Cassio. Othello, consumed by rage and despair, calls Iago a devil and stabs him. But he spares his life. Death, he says, would be too kind a punishment. Othello asks for Cassio's forgiveness, and then asks Iago, why? Why did he ensnare his body and soul? Iago, never missing an opportunity to be cruel, says, "From this time forth I will never speak word." Cassio explains to Othello how he found the handkerchief in his room, and it is revealed that Roderigo carried with him a letter explaining how Iago had also ensnared him in his plot. Still, Lodovico tells Othello that he will be stripped of his command and that Cassio will take over as general. Othello, quiet now, makes one final request, that they remember him honestly, not with hatred, but not with forgiveness either. Let them recall that he served the state well, but that he also threw away something far more precious. Othello then stabs himself and dies, collapsing upon Desdemona with the words, "I kissed thee ere I killed thee. No way but this, killing myself to die upon a kiss." The curtain closes on Lodovico, who provides the last words, condemning Iago to prison and whatever torture they might see fit. Within Shakespeare's sizable body of work, Othello stands as one of his most memorable and controversial plays. Race is, of course, a central issue. While some critics have labelled the play itself as racist, others argue that it's the characters like Iago and Brabantio who express racist views, not the work as a whole. The more enduring controversy has come not from the text, but from its performance history. For centuries, white actors portrayed Othello in blackface, often leaning into offensive stereotypes in the process. Part of the enduring relevance of Shakespeare comes from the lack of direction in his writing, leaving performances and productions free to interpret by reading between the lines of his poetic dialogue. And it doesn't take much to see the play as a pure tragedy. Two lovers, Othello and Desdemona, torn apart by the manipulations of a few destructive figures. Which brings us to one of the play's enduring mysteries. What is Iago's true motivation? While you can't brush away the importance of race, the play is also very much about jealousy. Iago tells Roderigo that he's angry over Cassio being promoted over him, but we also know that Iago tells Roderigo lies constantly throughout the play. His hatred for Othello runs so deep, his actions so extreme, that a petty professional slight hardly seems sufficient. Is race a factor? Almost certainly. But is it also envy? Is Iago jealous of Cassio's position, of Desdemona's love, of the strength and dignity Othello commands? Some have even speculated that Iago's motives might be rooted in repressed desire, that he loves Othello and wants to destroy what he can't have. That's the strange brilliance of Othello. You can build a strong case for any one of those motivations, or all of them at once. And it's why, despite the controversies, that openness to interpretation is part of what has made the play so lasting. Othello continues to provoke, unsettle, and captivate, and likely always will. Okay, that's it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can, please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. And we'll see you in the next Blink.